Happy New Year! Waking the Red Weekly is finally back after a multi-week hiatus in 2022. It already looks like it's going to be an incredible year for Toronto FC. Lorenzo Insigne will reportedly be announced as the club's latest and, quite frankly, biggest designated player signing later this week as club and player have agreed to a massive contract. My name is Mitchell Tierney, and today on the show, we'll also be joined by one of our favorite guests, Brendan Dunlop. We'll stop by in 10 minutes or so to chat some Toronto FC, chat some Canadian men's national team, and plenty more, I'm sure. But first, no Jeffrey Pinesca this week, unfortunately. Of course, we're starting off the new year down a man. But Michael's saying you've been quite busy over the past month or so since the last show. I'm pretty honored to be in the presence of Canadian Fabrizio.
Oh yeah, get out of here. You practice that one. I have to hold back on the smiles just because I got these AirPods for Christmas.
Mhm.
Man, they cannot stay in my ears. Every time I smile, I don't know what it is, but if you guys see me fiddling with my AirPods today, that is why. But yeah, man, it's exciting times obviously for Toronto FC, and it's honestly maybe just the tip of the iceberg. Um, I know there's a lot of moves that have to be made, and I think getting this one over the finish line, which I mean it was done for a week, but getting this over the finish line, it really helps TFC now move on to other processes, other targets that they're going after, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the show. But Lorenzo Insigne, maybe even the biggest signing in Major League Soccer history at this time in his career, maybe the best player. Obviously, you have David Beckham and Zlatan's, Wayne Rooney's, players that probably transcend the reach that Insigne has. But getting someone at this age, I don't know if there's ever been anyone better right now.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I really like the point that it's critical. It's the same thing we said about Bob Bradley, right? You get that done early on in the offseason. That's very important to have the man in charge who's going to be making all these decisions. But in the same vein, it's very important to have your designated player deal done as early as possible so you can build around, Lorenzo Insigne, because at the end of the day, we all know MLS still in 2022 is a designated player heavy league. It's less so than it was obviously in 2015 when Sebastian Jovincio joined, but at the same time, you want to make sure that your team is built around these players that you're paying significantly more money than the rest of the team, and we'll get into those contract figures because they are massive. But yeah, I think that is, like you said, a very important bit of business, and it's good to get it done early. So now they have time to really, look at what we still think is several other parts of this roster that do need overhaul. This doesn't change that, but it expedites the process in a way that I don't think any of us fully expected.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the biggest takeaway and biggest move that has to come is going to be freeing up a designated player spot, Mitch.
Mhm.
Something that we've talked about a couple of times on the show already, and that's the fact that they're not going to just have to free up one spot, or they're not going to be freeing up just one designated player spot. They're going to be freeing up a couple, and that's Josie Altaro, which it's been done for weeks as well. I know
Mhm.
Fabrizio reported something about the team still trying to figure out a buyout, but for what I'm hearing, that's already been done a couple of weeks ago. Um, and the other one is Jefferson Soteldo, which we hinted at it in the show in the past, and yeah, from what I'm hearing, he's not coming back to Toronto FC next season. And I know Chris Smith of 90 Minutes, I believe it was, he reported that Soteldo is being offered for about $7 million to a bunch of different clubs around the world. And I'm hearing something along the same lines. I know that several clubs in South America are interested in his services, and it's that one was let's get real. It was mostly an Ali Curtis signing,
Mhm.
and on the field, I'm an advocate for his talent. I think he's a player that TFC sort of needed, and him and Lorenzo Insigne are kind of that similar type of mold. Obviously, Insigne is going to be way better, but they're that winger that can create, and they can create a lot of goal scoring opportunities, not only for themselves, but for their teammates. And, and that's something TFC obviously did not get right in terms of maybe vetting the full character of Jefferson Soteldo. But in Insigne, they're going out and they're getting a player now that kind of really I don't want to say fixes all of last season, but it's a statement of intent. And that's they
Mhm.
want to get back to being the most ambitious club. I've seen that a lot on social media today. They want to get back to being the most ambitious club in Major League Soccer, and getting someone like Insigne. That's a big step in that direction.
Yeah, let's put some context on that ambition. The reported deal is for 11 million euros, which is roughly 12.4 million USD. Not a bad chunk of change. And 4.5 million euro bonus as well. It's a 5.5 year deal. He'll join Toronto FC this summer. As you said, prime player, 30-year-old winger. Spent the last 12 years at Napoli. Played over 400 times for the club, scoring over 100 goals. He's got 53 caps for Italy, 10 goals for the Italian national team. And yeah, he's a player who's won the Euros this past summer. Like Mike Newell said, I don't know if you can call him perfectly prime, but he's as close to it as a player of this caliber as we've seen, in the sense that, yeah, he's coming over, he's stepping away from a Champions League team when the other offers, like, that's the other thing too, is like, Toronto FC were the other teams linked to Insigne were all Champions League caliber teams. You had Tottenham, you had other teams within Italy, be it Inter Milan, like that kind of club. Like, this wasn't like it was like Toronto FC going up against, the kind of the usual suspects when it comes to their transfers, be it Saudi clubs, even Liga MX clubs, like that kind of league. Like, this was a statement of intent where they're buying a Champions League caliber player who's currently still a Champions League caliber player.
Yeah, Insigne at this time, and he could go play in any one of Europe's top five leagues. And not only that, I'd say he can play for any one of the contenders, really,
Yep.
in Europe's top five leagues. So this is a player that I don't think we've ever seen come over to MLS at this time in his career. And hey, it'll be a good measuring stick for the league in terms of, okay, we're getting a player like Insigne. Can he do what sort of Sebastian Jovincio did when he came over? Can
Mhm.
he just go off and create on his own, run through players, have some of those magical moments, or will MLS prove that it's really evolved, and maybe it's going to be tougher to get that one type of player type of show, because we've seen Insigne is capable of it on the world stage. So I don't have any reason to doubt that he'd be capable of doing that in MLS. But if he's not, then you start to wonder: is MLS moving up in the world? Is the
Mhm.
league getting better? So I'm excited to see kind of how that works out. And hey, it's a good time right now to be a Toronto FC supporter for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, like we've said many times, last year was a long, long year, and it was tough to see any sort of excitement going into this season just based on what we saw last year. But yeah, a move like this will quickly change opinions around the club. And like you said, back in statement of intent, like, this is a thing that big clubs do, is they have an off season, things go wrong, they don't waste any time fixing that. And it is interesting in the sense that it's very much, and this is something that's been well documented, but it's very much a return to what Toronto FC know has worked in the past. Like, they went for the younger designated player. They tried to bring in Jefferson Soteldo, who's a guy that, again, that's where the league's going, is those younger designated players that will eventually sell into Europe. And I don't think this means Toronto FC aren't going to go back there at some point. But this is very much in the vein of Jovinko, of Defoe, of that sort of thing, that they have the more proof of concept with they're just bringing in a player who's already at a high level, and like, this is probably his last contract or close to it.
Yeah, especially if the term is there, 5.5 years, and that's a long time. What is he,
Hmm.
Insigne, 31?
30, yeah.
So 30, so he'll be what, 30, 35, 36 by the end of this
Mhm.
contract. So, another key point to that, Mitch, is that you're going to have to get value now out of Insigne.
Right.
And that means building a really good team around this type of player.
Hmm.
And obviously, last year that wasn't the case. So, as we mentioned, there's a lot of different pieces that are going to have to come in. And one important thing to note is, yes, he's coming in the summer. So that also frees up an extra $350,000 for TFC to play with, which I
Good point.
think is going to be very important, because you're spending a lot of allocation money on Michael Bradley already. You're spending allocation money on Chris Mavinga. You're spending allocation money on potentially a couple of new signings. So it's good. It's more money to sort of play with here in terms of getting this roster right, and that money, that $350,000, whatever that they're saving, that could be someone like a Raheem Edwards, let's say, that pays his salary completely. So that's the ability that they have right now to go out and get another piece, because they have that financial flexibility for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something to watch out for is what they do with the rest of the off season as well, like how they build off of this. And yeah, I mean, we've already seen one signing from them, and it was the exact kind of signing you want to offset, I think, this kind of big European splash, which is just bringing in more solid MLS veterans. Because that was, again, this is something that I think they've kind of, under Curtis, to some extent, gotten away from a little bit too much, which was the idea of signing more MLS proven commodities, because we all know how important the combination of that was in 2017. It was, yes, you have your Vasquez, your Jovincio, your Altidore, those kind of players, but you also have your Beta Shore, Morrow, Moore, Clint Irwin. Like, those guys are just as important, because you need that balance in the roster. You need those guys who, for those mid tier allocation money, like you said, they're not gonna take that adjustment period. They're not gonna maybe not fit in the MLS system. Like, they know what to expect here. They know how the travel works, all of that. Like, it's important to have so many of those guys on your roster, and that's why I did like the Shane O'Neill signing, in terms of what it means for the club.
What a great segue, man. Yeah, I think that's a really good shout. And Shane O'Neill, he's not going to come in and be the savior there at the back line, but what he will do, he'll provide a lot more steadiness than TFC had at the back in years past. I don't know if he's gonna. I doubt he's gonna come in and be a starter. I know Bob Bradley kind of likes to play a 4-3-3 formation, and if you already have Chris Mavinga plus maybe someone else on the way, and maybe another signing as well there at the back, then it's going to be tough for Shane O'Neill to really crack the starting rotation. But hey, this is going to be potentially a big international year. There'd be times where TFC perhaps lose some people to international duty and whatever, different types of things that come up where you're going to need someone to step in. And O'Neill's proven that he can not only do that, but do it for a pretty dang good club for a lot of years. So yeah, you're bang on there, and getting these type of players to kind of complement your big pieces is so essential to what this league has evolved into, and that's just the way MLS is with the salary budget. But we have a friend of the show, Brendan, here. So whenever you want to bring on our guy, you ready?
Well, I think we should talk about Shane O'Neill a little long. No, just kidding. Let's bring Brendan. How are you doing, Brendan? Good to chat again. Oh,
I think you're muted, Brendan.
yeah, I think he is. I think for once this isn't a your AirPod problem, Mikey.
Wow.
This might be on his end. There we go.
I was just so excited by the Shane O'Neill talk that I didn't want to step on your toes. So, what's up, boys? Thanks for having me back on the show, man. I even put on a collared shirt for you guys today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got a lot of blank wall space though. Like Mitch is set up, man. Like that's top class. Like, do you also do NFL Live on ESPN? Like, it seems like you're using the same set.
I'm trying to audition for it.
You can't really teach that. I mean, I got it kind of half going. You got the bookshelf there in the background, but Mitch is just all out. And another thing, man, I think we got like 3 separate types of dressier clothes on here, which I'm liking right now, guys. Different type of aesthetic we're offering. So
new year,
good start.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Exactly. You come for the football takes, you stay for the men's fashion catalog that we get around Waking Red Weekly. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we didn't bring you on, Brendan, to talk about Shane O'Neill. We brought you on to talk about another big Toronto FC signing that looks like it will be announced in the coming days. And that, of course,
have you heard, Brendan?
Yeah. Have you?
Oh, yeah, no, the Raheem Edwards you were saying. That great allocation.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Good to see the man come back.
Yeah, no, but Lorenzo Insigne looks like he'll be done within days now. In terms of MLS signings as a whole, where does this rank, and what does this mean for Toronto FC that they've been able to get a player like this, who again is currently Champions League caliber?
Whenever you can get your club's name or just your city's name in Fabrizio Romano's mouth and have him say it across all of his platforms constantly, where people around the world are double taking, like, did he say Torino? No, he said Toronto. I mean, it's massive. Obviously, this is a record move for Major League Soccer, and to get someone that is a European champion in their prime is not something that Major League Soccer has been able to do in the past. And obviously, Toronto FC are putting up a lot of money to do that, right? So let's not be lost on that. And the fact that they've got to this point though, where it looks like they're going to cross the finish line, this is a move that a lot of us had heard was on the radar, maybe, or something that they were thinking about before. I believe even Bob Bradley came aboard. So the fact that they've seemed to go across the finish line with this now and push this forward is pretty incredible for the club. So I guess we can all celebrate when the F is next to the scoreboard and he's actually here, because he's going to make nights at BMO Field a lot more entertaining for us, and of course a lot for the fan base, and bring Toronto FC closer back to the team that they were in the end of the last decade, which is obviously where they want to get back to. And this is on brand for MLSE. They want to put bums in seats. They've got the money to do it. So for those fans that endured the last couple of seasons, it's pretty nice for them to have a star like Insigne, and who knows who else alongside him out there on the pitch.
They didn't even have to pay the cameo fee for Fabrizio.
No, they didn't have to pay the cameo fee. You're right. Yeah, I'm glad that gets a lot of chat on the soccer socials here in this country. Yeah,
that's so funny. So getting back to kind of what you were saying at the end of your rant there.
I'm a big gabber, buddy. I talk a lot in Portuguese.
Oh, buddy, anytime. Actually, anytime. I can listen to you talk all day.
This is the TV trick. Oh, bro, I appreciate that. Same for you. The TV trick is if you hold like a mug in your hand, then your hands will actually move less. Otherwise, you're spilling it all over yourself. So if you're ever in that situation, boy.
Good to know. When I'm on NFL, yeah.
I like it.
Remember that.
Yeah, so getting back to what you were saying there, does this kind of right the ship from last year? Does this kind of reinstill that excitement back within Toronto FC to sort of where it was before, obviously, that devastating season last year?
I mean, it does a lot to excite the fan base, for sure. Right the ship, there's still a lot to do, as you say, to build a team around these star players, especially if it's a Belotti that comes in with Insigne, or someone else that's completely removed from the North American game. There's going to be some adjustment there. And you mentioned Steven Beitashour. I think that was honestly one of the best signings that they've made in franchise history, because of the time in which they did it. And Morrow was also there as well. I think actually John Molinaro may have used that term on Justin Morrow when they acquired him. It's important to build a team around players like this. So it's going to take some time. I don't think they're going to be title favorites immediately with Insigne coming back in, but they're definitely going to spark fear in some teams that had started to maybe look at TFC as a joke, or not see them as a power, as they really had kind of relegated or returned to the teams of the past that TFC fans hung their heads in their hands for. And to see them come away from that now and have people be excited, like BMO's going to be rocking. Hopefully, come who knows what the situation will be like as far as COVID is concerned come the start of the season, but BMO's going to be an incredible place to be again. Seriously,
I checked last night, and TFC were plus 2,600 right now to win the MLS Cup.
Really?
Which is, I mean, that's before obviously anything it became a quote unquote official at the Insigne, and I wonder if those odds sort of move up. But that's pretty good value for a team that is showing this sort of ambition. The biggest question mark, I guess, will be, can TFC get to the postseason without Insigne for about half the year? And that's going to be something I guess we're going to have to see play out. But Mitch, I'll throw it to you for I'm sure you have another question lined up.
Well, yeah, kind of in that vein, and you talked about the roster and how important that is to build a good team around Insigne. But what do you think are some of the key factors that Toronto FC will have to consider to put Insigne in a position to thrive in MLS? When we all know it is a tricky league to transition into in terms of the travel, in terms of multiple things that come with MLS being MLS. But what do you think are some of those important things that perhaps they learned from a Jovincio coming over?
Well, actually, I think they can take a lot of learning from last season and bringing Soteldo in. Here's Santos' number 10. He's going to fix all of our problems. And yeah, he looked great against Pacific in the Canadian Championship semifinal, where he could, be clearly the lone man on the pitch that was miles above everybody else. But it doesn't really work that way in a league, right? And I felt bad for Soteldo in a lot of ways, because he really was kind of left out on his own and wasn't supported. So I think just based on that alone, building a team where he doesn't have to be the only option. And I mean, that was also some nights with Jovincio as well, where if Josie wasn't there, if Michael Bradley was out the side, and it just felt like, okay, we've got maybe the best player in league history here, but we're not able to utilize him and to use him. So just supporting him that way so that Insigne is not, the only game changer. I think TFC have learned from last season a lot. And I'm very excited to see Pozuelo and Insigne and whoever else it is that they bring alongside him. I was really excited to see Insigne, to see Pozuelo and Soteldo, and we never truly got to see it because as a unit they were never complete and there was never consistency. So I would hope that they'd be able to build that once he arrives in the summer, and he's going to be inspired, right? Insigne is definitely going to be motivated to keep his place in the Italian national team, because that will be the narrative that everyone overseas pumps in his head. Oh, you're going to America for all this money. It's Canada, but you're going to lose all of this. You're going to lose all of your love with the national team, and you'll never play for the Azzurri again. You'll be lucky to get to Qatar. So he's going to be super motivated. Hopefully they're in a position where they're already a winning team and they can insert a serial winner and an incredible talent and push on and make for a hell of a season.
Yeah, sort of building off that. And this is sort of, I don't know, I don't have an answer yet. I'm hearing it's still, they're going back and forth. But does this help in any way kind of get Sebastian Jovincio across the line? Do you think that'll happen, Brendan? And kind of how is that going to, do you think that's going to play out?
A great question. And actually, I wanted to hear your take on Jovincio. I heard from some very reliable sources that Jovincio had told some people in the city that he was coming back. He was made assurances he was coming back. This was before any Insigne rumors. This was before Bob Bradley. I was under the impression this might have even happened before the end of last season to put bums in seats. That was my suspicion. So I wonder if when Bob Bradley arrives, the conversation is, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get this across the line. And Bob Bradley says, why don't we go get the guys that are doing it now? You guys got the money. Let's get the Italians at the top of the game now. And so that's where the conversation has gone. So do you go and bring in Insigne and bring back Jovincio? I mean, there'd be a lot of people that love it. A lot of TFC fans that would love to see it. I don't know if it's going to actually get all of Woodbridge out into the stands, but I think that would be a real motivating factor, certainly from the marketing team and the ticketing department. I would like to see it, but I don't know if it's the right move. I think it's be a lot of nostalgia and hoping that, oh, look, our old legend can help these new Italian legends settle in. It's a different situation than when Toronto FC brought D-Row back at the end, for his last stint after DC United, wanting to kind of right the ship and start a new chapter, and hope that there was something left and something special there from Dwayne after a couple of injury riddled seasons in DC. I think with Jovincio now, it's nostalgia that's pushing it forward, but the talk of getting guys like Belotti and Insigne and in that level, I don't know if Jovincio is the right fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a fair point, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch because he's certainly very vocal right now about about his entire situation, and that's made this all more complicated and more entertaining at the very least. What are your thoughts in general on Bob Bradley hire and I guess what he's done so far? I mean, there hasn't been much, but and he hasn't had a lot of time. But the early days here and the decision to bring him in as, I guess, dual GM and coach.
Yeah, I mean, the autonomy was always going to be, I think, what got him here, the hook. It wasn't just Michael. It wasn't just living in Toronto and relocating. It was always going to be power and control of a club that kind of needs a steadier hand. And in the past, obviously, have gone through some very tumultuous management regimes. And here's a guy who has been at the top of American soccer, or nearly the top of American soccer for 20 years. And this is an American soccer league, and I think that he can do some different things for Toronto FC and look at it with a slightly different eye, which is a positive for Toronto. Really is. I mean, here's a guy who got to the CONCACAF Champions League final in a pandemic, and was within minutes or a goal or two of winning the Champions League, and that's where this club wants to be after having won MLS Cup. This is still their goal to be a CONCACAF Champions League power, and here's a guy who who knows, what it's like to get up there with some star players as well, and in a world-class superstar city that's kind of on brand for him. So I think that he's going to bring a lot to Toronto, and well, I guess we'll just have to see how the season starts with, as Mike says, this is going to be truly a tale of two seasons, because it will be completely different when Insigne does arrive in July, if that's still the case.
I think, yeah, that's the biggest thing there with Bob, is that this team lost its identity, its culture, and if everything I've heard, Bob Bradley's a culture setter. He demands accountability, and as you mentioned there, he's also going to play a significant role in kind of shaping what this team looks like moving forward. And he's proven he can done it. What is it? A 3-time MLS Coach of the Year. Like, his resume there's not many coaches in Major League Soccer right now that have a better resume than Bob Bradley. And I think that was sort of the first major move of this offseason. Yeah, we can talk about Insigne, but it doesn't matter if you don't have a manager or coach that can set him up to succeed. And I guess that's why Bob Bradley was so significant there. Mitch, you want to segue a little bit and talk? There's a lot going on right now in Canada and soccer, so why don't we shift directions a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, let's talk a bit of national team, because it's obviously a massive month for Canada as well. Huge friendly coming up against Guatemala that we're all very excited for. But no, I guess it, in some ways, it is kind of big, because we expect some potential dual nationals and a wider camp to be involved in that. So it could be critical for those sort of things. But I think all eyes are obviously on Tim Hortons Field in the game against the United States, as well as a place that Canada has kind of had all kinds of terrible moments in San Pedro Sula in Honduras as well. So, I mean, if there is a window that almost has the most meaning, it might be this one, because you've got your boogeyman venue, and you've got the team that for so many years you've been trying to catch in the United States all at once. How big is this window for Canada? And what are you feeling going in? Because obviously, this team is so close now to Qatar, and this window could really almost push them over the line.
I think what's great about this window is that it's not so life or death as we envisioned when we saw the fixture list come out, as you expect when you see those names on a fixture list. That's, I think, the real blessing. There's going to be some struggles with this window. I think travel is going to be a nightmare. The weather, it could be a nightmare, on both sides of things. But I think that in Hamilton, you're not going to get the best game. You're not going to get Canada's best 11 versus the United States best 11, and measure these two teams where they're at. That's just not going to be the situation on turf in minus 8,000 degree weather. And I look back to the Mexico game and leading up to the Mexico game, and the feeling of wow, could they really come out of this window with 6 points here against Costa Rica and Mexico? They could, but I was actually growing in before that game kicked off. I was beginning to feel disappointed that we wouldn't actually see Canada and Mexico go at it evenly, and on what would be a real measure of the two talents and where the two teams are. So I kind of have a bit of that feeling against the States as well. I do feel confident that Canada will go in and take a good point total from this window. But if they don't take 9 points, if they only take 4, or if they only take 3, it's not a disaster because of the work that they put in previously. And I don't think that that's a feeling that we as Canadian soccer supporters and observers have had, right? To not panic after a couple poor results. So I'm excited for this window. I'm excited for that game against the States, but I do kind of wish it would be on a more neutral surface. Do you know what I mean?
Well, speaking of a neutral surface there, Brendan, with everything going on right now, I gotta ask, what are your thoughts? Do you think we still get a packed crowd? You have no idea. What are you thinking here in terms of that environment that we're potentially going to see at the end of January there at Tim Hortons Field?
Yeah, gut feeling, hey? I mean, who knows what to predict in this world in general when it
Yeah,
comes to
seriously.
decisions that are dictated by governments and policies. I do suspect there will be fans. My gut is that they're going to try and make that a 50% venue, and like the CPL, put everyone on the TV side. But it's for a safety decision, right? I do think that there'll be 50% capacity, and hopefully, we get fortunate where it's not minus 80, and it is a decent night for those fans that have waited a long time to see Canadian men's national team at this level that can kick it with the best of the U.S. throughout there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were already bemoaning how difficult it was to get tickets, or not really bemoaning. I mean, it's actually probably a good thing for Canadian soccer how difficult it is to get tickets now for this national team game. But now, I
Yeah,
mean, I can only imagine the headache that will come with telling half those people, "Hey, you know those tickets that you got no longer going to work." So, that's all. I mean, obviously, we're days into the new rules, but that's all going to be such a headache that will
yeah.
be
I don't envy the position that ticketing department is in, but if we can
no.
give them a piece of advice, first off, before you contact any of these ticket buyers that you have to take the tickets away from, contact Nike and get a bunch of those black jerseys that everybody wants, and then give those jerseys to the people whose tickets you have to
Mm.
take away, and maybe
Yeah,
that'll
funny
soften the
story. Funny story. So I actually, before they even brought out the black jersey, they put the jerseys up for sale. Guys, I ordered a black jersey. I got a red one instead. I was like, okay, yeah, like, whatever. It's
Yeah.
still nice. It's an Alfonso Davies, red jersey.
Yeah.
But then they brought out the black jerseys in the Ice Tech, and I'm like,
Yeah.
now that stings. I want one of those black jerseys. But hey, it is what it is. I still got an Alfonso Davies jersey. I know a lot of people are struggling to get kits from Canada Soccer right now, so
Mhm.
I am grateful for that.
Yeah, was it GQ that listed the black Jonathan David jersey as one of their like
That
fashion items of the
too.
month, and everyone was joking that it was tougher to get than some of the exclusive like Gucci stuff that was also on that list. So yeah, that would definitely go a long way to easing some of the pain that I think will come with the half capacity. But I think, as we said, we all hope that there are fans there and that it's a special environment, because these are the biggest games, some of the biggest games that Canada's played in our history. So yeah, an exciting month ahead for sure.
And you know what, too, thinking about maybe the worst case scenario, if the scenario is they can't play in front of any fans, I still hope that they do it there, that they don't relocate or cave to moving it to some other venue, or, I could, God forbid, some situation like, well, we'll just play it in the States, because then we
Mhm.
can,
Yeah.
still have a gate. In the past, I think that would have been a real probability and a real fear, right? So I hope we don't go
Yeah.
down that route.
Yeah, and the thing about the Ice Teca was, it was terrible soccer, but like you said, they got 6 points. Like that's at the end of the day, like that's the biggest and most important thing here is almost not the like we all hope they play nice soccer, and like we all want to see them play to the best of their potential, but we want to get to a World Cup
Yeah,
period. So I think that's the
exactly.
most important thing here.
The
Exactly.
stakes have never been higher. The
No.
stakes have never been higher. And yeah, I think, Brendan, I agree with you. If this was another year and another Canada US game, which, Canada before 2019, what was it, 34 years or something, they haven't beat the States in, then yeah, I would envision them probably moving that game down to the States. But no, not anymore. We need
Not
every
now.
advantage we can get. Yeah, exactly.
No, we're playing in
Um,
Winnipeg in front of no one before we go back to nationals. Okay.
exactly. You love it.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think we'll wrap this up there, though. Thank you, Brendan, so much for coming on. It's been great.
Yeah, anytime, boys. Appreciate it. I always love talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Of course,
Absolutely.
Brendan. One more thing. I don't think Mitch has one of those Dero books back in his bookshelf, man. I think he's
Oh,
missing one book in
right
particular.
there, right
Oh,
there.
it's covered by the mic. I couldn't see
Yeah.
it. See, look at his placement.
Mitch,
Terrible advertising.
no, Mitch had like a college week. Excuse me, cottage, not college. Cottage weekend.
College. Probably
Uh,
both.
a cottage weekend, and he messaged me that he read it and crushed it on the weekend. So I appreciate it, boys. Thank you. It was great to do the book, and Dwayne DeRosario and I are hoping to be able to do some signing events in the new year. Something we weren't able to do at all in 2021. So yeah, hopefully there'll be some really big nights at BMO, and we can be there and do some book signing events for the fans.
Yeah,
For
looking
sure. I
forward
love
to
that read.
it. Mhm.
All right, Brendan. We'll chat soon.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
that's always a great chat. Anytime we can get
Oh,
Brendan
yeah.
Dunlop on here, great way to start the year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he said some interesting stuff. And I think, I was hearing something along the same lines in terms of Sebastian Jovinko back before, obviously, the season ended. And I was hearing for January.
Mhm.
And that deal was essentially all but done. But clearly that wasn't the case. Something else transpired there. And
Well, I mean, Ali Curtis left.
maybe that's what
Gotta
it
be
was.
that's well, you'd think that'd be part of it, like the fact they changed the architect, and like Brendan said, now now Bradley comes in and is like, why are we going after the past and we could be going after the future?
Well, here's what I think. Also, it's that, as I think someone else mentioned this in the chat, is it's the price that Jovinco's wanting, and we all read that great Toronto Star piece by Laura Armstrong, where she kind of identifies sort of the price range which Jovinco was looking at, and if it's anything close to Michael Bradley money, it just this team really can't afford that luxury right now. So hey, if Jovinco wants to come at 500,000, maybe a little bit more than that, by all means, I'm sure that door is wide open for someone like him. But if he's holding out for that extra $1 million, then that's where it gets really tough, because as we mentioned a bunch of times, like this is a salary budget league, and TFC have a lot of rebuilding to do this offseason, and I'm not sure they can really afford that sort of luxury and bringing in a Jovinco right now.
It's really what he is at this point. He's a luxury player, and especially when you have Insigne, who's a very, very similar profile to what Sebastian Jovinco was at his best. Like, that's a player that you don't need right now. It's a player that you want because he, again, all the things we've mentioned, nostalgia. I do think he, given his ability, would still be a decent MLS player, but at the same point, like, there's so many other things that this team needs to address that I think that's a good point. I did want to ask you something or mention something that was asked during the interview and that we didn't transition to, but peaked too soon, asking, nobody concerned at all about the fact we're tying up another DP slot to a 30-plus-year-old. Which
I hear you. I hear you. I hear the concern. But this isn't just a 30-year-old. This is a player that anyone in Major League Soccer would want. This is a guy that really kind of moves the needle for what the league is, moves those goalposts in terms of, okay, now we can get these sort of caliber of signings. Sure, like we have some PTSD over the Josie Altidore incident and signing and all of that, but I don't think that should really stray away your interest when you're getting a player of this caliber. Obviously, in an ideal world, you want someone who's 24, 25, 26, entering their sort of prime years, as opposed to kind of getting towards the end of their prime. But that being said, this is a guy fresh off who's scoring absolute wonder goals at the European Championships, winning the Euros for Italy. This isn't a different sort of caliber of player. So right now I have no concern. Obviously the length of the contract, sure, we can talk about that in a couple of years. But with that being said, like his class is going to be there. The way he thinks the game, the pace that he plays the game at, like that kind of stuff you can't really get out of as someone younger and perhaps in a worse league. So if you're going to get someone of Insigne's caliber at 24, 25 years old, and it's what we kind of ideally want, you're paying over, I don't know, in this market, maybe like 100 million, right? For that sort of transfer fee. I don't think Napoli's letting him go if he's that age. So yeah, for me, there's no question right now that he's absolutely worth the price tag. And yeah, I'm not too scared of any sort of repercussions of that right now.
Yeah, I think that perfectly sums it up. I mean, this is a player who has abilities that will translate for the next 5 years. This isn't a player who like relies on his physicality. I mean, he's 5'4", so probably that's not the biggest part of his game. Like those things that kind of diminish, and like we have those kind of bad reference points in the sense that Josie Altidore, and to a lesser extent Michael Bradley, like we've seen the diminishing returns over the past couple of years of players who came in kind of close to their prime. And obviously, in 5 years' time, Insigne is not going to be the player that he is now, but I think he'll be close enough to make this worth it. So yeah, I'm not I don't share those concerns either. I think yes, obviously you'd like to have him a little younger, but at this point, the caliber of player, we've seen players of his ilk in Europe. I mean, heck, Atiba Hutchinson's 39 now, and he's still playing Champions League soccer. And I don't think anyone in Toronto FC circles would turn down, an Atiba returning that caliber of player. So there are definitely players who, as much as we're all about the youth now in I guess culture in general, like there's something to be gained for that veteran savvy.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of segues nicely into another player that Toronto FC are sort of rumored with.
Mhm.
And that is, of course, the Andrea Bellotti rumors.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, I don't want to be kind of the bearer of bad news, but from everything I've heard, those rumblings they're definitely overblown. I know TFC did check in on him earlier. Even this offseason, they checked in on him earlier this offseason, but there's nothing definite in terms of them going out and making an offer for this type of player. I'm hearing any of those conversations. They were not meaningful conversations.
Mm.
So I wouldn't get my hopes up too much about Bellotti joining Toronto FC along with Insigne. But with that being said, there are a couple of other players that this league or this team is linked with right now. And one of the names that I'm hearing that, Bill Manning perhaps could get done in sort of that same time frame as Lorenzo Insigne, and addresses another need that this club has, and that's Crescito, Domenico Crescito, Mimo Crescito, of Genoa. And he's a versatile defender. I know he's probably listed as a left back, but I would say he's probably someone who could easily fill in at center back for this club. And I'm hearing that deal is pretty close to getting done. And I would say he would probably come in as sort of a TAM player under allocation money. And I think that sort of deal kind of, like I said, it addresses a major need that this club has, and that's at the back line. So if you can bring in Crescito, Insigne, that addresses two major needs that this team has in sort of one kind of go. And getting both of those deals done would be fantastic, especially when I'm hearing that neither deal comes with a transfer fee. So it would just be, a salary that you have to pay. And that's exciting right now for Toronto FC. I know Crescito is a little bit older in age. I think he's getting up to about 35 years old. But he is a very important piece to that Genoa team in Serie A, which is miles better right now than what Major League Soccer is. So I don't have any issue, or I don't have any concern about whether or not Crescito would be able to hang here in Major League Soccer. And I'm hearing that he'll join in the summer as well. So keep an eye out for anything more tangible about that. But that's really exciting. Another player that the team has been actively pursuing. I've heard people, I tweeted that out, that TFC is pursuing another Serie A striker, another Italian striker, and I see a couple people have guessed who it was already. And yeah, I think it might be a report out there already, but I'm hearing Mattia Destro is also a name that this team is targeting.
Did they just send those scouts to Genoa?
Yeah, I guess so, man. I guess so. It's like we said, like Woodbridge is going to be on fire in 2022, and that means that like we said off the top of the show, like they're going to have to fill two designated player spots, and perhaps these two are the guys that are going to come in. I know the Destro deal is a little bit further than any of these other deals that are happening right now, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So exciting times for anyone in Toronto FC right now, because that's a big upgrade from where we were last year.
Yeah, absolutely is. And yeah, Destro and Crescito, both players who, like Insigne, not to the same extent, but both have plenty of Italian caps under their belts. So these are players that come over with great pedigree. And, Destro's another one of those guys who's been putting up goals in Serie A very recently. Like, this is a guy who would come over and have the potential to fill the net, especially with a guy like Insigne and Pozuelo and those guys around him. Like, that's setting him up for success. So those would be very exciting signings, and obviously the fact that Toronto FC is linked to these players is a good sign. A good sign that they're out there doing a lot of work. Like we said, we want to make sure they supplement them with MLS players, but under Bob Bradley, like I have confidence that'll come, because we've seen what they did with LAFC, where they had all those top guys, and then you had your Mark Anthony Kays and your Latif Blessings and those sort of guys that I don't want to say made up the numbers, because that's not fair to either of those players, but like built the solid core of the team to where those main guys could flourish around them.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be kind of the test that I think Bob Bradley has. I know a lot of these deals with Bill Manning, that's been in the works for before even Bob Bradley arrived. Obviously, this Insigne one's been in the works for quite some time. So I think that's going to be, like I said, Bob Bradley's biggest challenge there is filling those gaps in between some of these big names that Bill has already identified, and then the rest of the Toronto FC a scouting staff and their GMs there have identified of exactly who they want to bring in. So again, like players like Raheem Edwards are linked to TFC, which I think would fill, personally, if we want to talk about Raheem Edwards a little bit, I think that's a perfect fit right now for TFC. Someone who could slot in there at left wing back, someone who could push a little bit higher up the field if needed, but someone most importantly who offers pace. And that's something I think this team lacks a lot of, aside from someone like a Richie Larea, maybe Jaden Nelson even, Jacob Schaffelberg, of course. There's not a lot of pace on the squad. Up top, if you get someone like Destro, then that's complementing your attacking core, which will already include Ayo Akinola, Achara, and whoever else they can kind of get there, Jordan Perusa as well, kind of get there to kind of fill that number 9 void. So a lot of this will be determined by the way Bob Bradley wants to play, wants to line up, the kind of shape he wants to build. But there's a lot of holes still left to fill, and I'm sure it's going to be a busy couple of weeks right now for TFC.
What's the latest on Ayo, by the way?
Well, I heard Ayo was, again, I think we talked about this on our show about 2.5 weeks ago, and I was hearing that Ayo's coming back. I still think nothing is official yet, but I was hearing that those talks were very good, and I don't think it was really a question mark whether or not he would come back, as I heard 2.5 weeks ago. I think Steve Buffrey has done some good reporting talking to Bill Manning. I think he said that something along the lines that a deal's close, but we'll see if that gets announced soon.
Might be an announcement week for Toronto FC. I mean, Insigne, the Altidore stuff, like there's a lot of stuff that seems like it's been done for a bit, but just hasn't had the press releases or what have you. So we'll see with that. I think the Raheem Edwards thing is a good point, and also brings to mind another part of the 2017 team. And again, we're using that as a basis here. Obviously, MLS has moved since then, and there's new things, but having players like that who are versatile, and I think that's something that's very important, and something that maybe Toronto FC didn't have as much of this past year. I mean, you look at like guys like Nico Hasler, even Moro, who could play up and down that side. Like they had plenty of guys in that 2017 team that could fill in multiple roles, and Raheem Edwards is a perfect example of that, where he can play anywhere up and down that left side. Also can play in the midfield. We saw with LAFC this past year. So the more of those guys they can bring in, the better, I think. But let's chat a little bit about where we think the gaps still are in light of Insigne signing for this Toronto FC team.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest gaps, I know it's been kind of a luxury kind of the last couple of years, but I'm not sure how confident I feel about that kind of holding midfield position. And I know Michael Bradley, that's been his MO for a long time. But I think he was solid last year. He's no longer the player he once was. I think that's pretty obvious. So now who do we have kind of behind him in that sort of role? Obviously you have someone like Ralph Priso, but is he a natural number 6? Really. I'm not too sure about that. I think he's more so a box-to-box type of guy. And then you think about someone like Liam Fraser, Mitch. Is Liam Fraser potentially in the mix to kind of shore up that sort of kind of position? Is that something he would even want to take on after not really been given an opportunity the last couple of years? Like I don't know. That's a question mark right there. I know TFC want to bring him back. Yeah, exactly. Very, very tough sell, especially when he's lived through that kind of experience once already. And when you have Bob Bradley coming back, it's not really a good selling point to someone like Liam Fraser that Michael Bradley is going to be taking a step back in sort of the role he's been playing the last couple of years. So I think it's tough because you have players like a Delgado, you have players like Osorio who are so good at MLS. And then you have someone like an up-and-comer like Noble Okello who can also take those minutes. But is there a question about whether or not TFC need to improve the quality of their midfield? That's kind of where I'm at in terms of that. Another big question mark for me is the right wing spot. I know you have someone like a Jacob Schaffelberg that could play there, or you have someone that a Jaquil Marshall-Rudy, Jaden Nelson, maybe even a Chara. But you have maybe is Tsubasa Endo going to come back? I'm not sure. But I think that's been a big question mark ever since that Erickson Gallardo signing. Even going back before that, is who's going to kind of take hold of that right midfield spot. Ozo can obviously play there as well. Richie, if he wants to get pushed up, so there are options there. But who's going to be the guy to kind of lay claim to that? So that's another really big question mark I'm looking out for. In goal, I think they're set. I'm not sure what other concerns really that I have there, man. How about you?
Yeah, I think the midfield is an interesting discussion because I think it's really, really close to being like, I don't think this year we saw any of those players play up to their ability. And I think they still have that, like Osorio, Delgado. They've proven over the course of the past, and Bradley as well, they've proven over the course of the past few seasons that they're very, very good MLS midfielders. Ralph Priso obviously going down, I think, exacerbated all the issues in that area. So I mean, yes, they need like a Liam Fraser type, I think, or someone in that ilk to kind of round out the numbers in there. But I think it's pretty close to being a solid midfield unit. The other thing I will mention is Shane O'Neill has in fact played a little bit of defensive midfield in the past. I don't think that's the plan, but it's at least worth noting that he's a player with that flexibility where if you really are in a pinch, he could play at the base of a midfield. And you're based on his numbers and everything, you're not getting a player who's going to progress the ball very well, but you're at least getting a player who's not going to lose you the ball in that position, which obviously Toronto struggled with a lot this past season. So that kind of solidity is helpful. I mean, again, I think it's just filling in those made pieces in terms of the spine of this team. Like you want at least one more commanding center back, and you want to make sure you have someone up top who's finishing off the chances, and then from there, I think you can build pieces around there, or even some of the pieces that weren't as good this past season will step up again. Because again, like even talking to Brendan today, you think about the fact that like TFC had the last year or the year before his MLS MVP that like barely played this year. Like if Alejandro Pozuelo returns to near 2020, 2019 form, like that's like a new signing for Toronto FC.
Yeah, that's a great point. And another, perhaps gap is I want a striker that can run in behind. I know Ayo Akinola is decent at it, but I want someone with pace up top that can get on the end of Pozuelo's through balls or Insigne's chances. Because I think, again, TFC lacks a lot of that pace. Achara is not, obviously he had a devastating injury, but he's not that quick. Dom Dwyer is not going to be that quick. Jordan Peruz is not going to be that quick. So you have four kind of similar types of molds there up top. Obviously, they're kind of different players, but similar in the way that they like to be, playing in front of sort of that back line as opposed to kind of getting in behind with, exception of maybe a little bit of Ayo and a little bit of Achara. So I think maybe that type of profile, just to give a different type of mix, something that was great in 2017 is, you had Josie Altidore, who was, fantastic striker at the time. But then you also had someone like a Tosaint Ricketts that you could bring in off the bench sort of at any time. And he was such a great asset to have just to kind of change the kind of dynamic that TFC were offering and kind of coming in against tired legs. I thought that was absolutely fantastic there in terms of that kind of luxury. So perhaps a player of that kind of mold. And another thing I want to point out is something that Bill Manning talked about in his end of season press conference was how much losing sort of veterans like Pablo Piatti, Laurent Simon, how much that hurt this team. And now we're going to be losing someone like Justin Morrow. You're going to be losing Omar Gonzalez. How does that sort of
Zabs as well? I think you got to throw Zabs, at least in terms of his locker room personality. From what we've heard with the young guys, you have to throw him into that mix.
Definitely. So how do they kind of fill that? Obviously, Nick DeLeon's in there as well. I know he was well liked in the TFC dressing room, even though TFC fans, of course, were kind of quick to give him a hard time. But how do you fill that sort of mold, or that sort of gap there? Because right now it's a locker room that needs to kind of refine its culture and sort of get back to the basics. And a good way to do that is bringing in steady veterans. And I'm wondering how you kind of address that. So it'll be interesting to see how Bob Bradley decides to go about rounding out the rest of this roster, but it's definitely not complete. I think the only thing that really is complete right now is probably their goaltending.
Yeah.
Other than that, I still think there's question marks throughout the roster.
I'd agree. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, that's where the cultural shift would loom large. Like even from a leadership standpoint, like I remember one of the things watching Canada play versus watching Toronto FC, like Jonathan Osorio on the pitch for Canada is like directing guys and barking at guys and like has this incredible leadership aspect where he looks like a captain out there. And then you watch him with Toronto FC, he's not saying anything. And again, I think that was a byproduct of just how terrible things got by the end of the season in terms of like the belief within that squad and everything. But yeah, I think like a lot of these guys have that ability within them, and you can't obviously like fully bank on the fact, like that's why you can't run back the same roster as last year, right? Because we don't know that these guys are going to rediscover kind of their past form. But I think there's a lot of guys like that where you can make solid, educated bets on them that they will bounce back, and that especially if you inject some quality beside them and inject some belief into this team and a new manager, like they will bounce back. So you're going to be getting some improvement from within at least as well.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll have a lot of TFC talk to get to as this kind of off season progresses. I know there's still a lot of moves kind of coming down the pipeline, so keep it locked to TFC on socials, keep it locked to Wake in the Red. But let's transition a little bit quickly, talk a little bit about kind of as we touched on with Brendan, the Canadian soccer landscape in general right now, heading into 2022 after what was undoubtedly the greatest year in Canadian soccer history from both a men's and women's perspective there. So, Mitch, I guess, what are you looking forward to right now in the 2022 Canadian soccer landscape?
I mean, I think probably number one, and this is obvious, is the Canadian men's national team qualifiers. I mean, they have huge games coming up, and like we said, like they're incredibly close to getting to a World Cup for the first time since 1986, and I think we all believe that they have the ability and everything to get there. So that's the main thing that I'm really looking forward to. I guess the continued development of the Canadian Premier League as well. Like we saw the league take another step forward this year, and there's a lot of exciting stuff about that league coming out as well. So yeah, really looking forward to both of those things. And again, I think all three Canadian MLS sides this year, I mean, between Toronto FC now making big acquisitions, what we saw at the end of the year from the Vancouver Whitecaps, and some of the moves that Montreal is making as well. Like, I think this is going to be a big season for all three. Like, I think all three are going to push for the playoffs, and I would be surprised if all three make it in. So I'm excited about that as well. I think you know, the saying of rising tide, you know, rise all boats or whatever. Darn it, we always mess that up whenever I try and say that saying on the show. But we need Jeff in the comments.
You guys get the point.
Tell us what it is. Yeah, but you guys get the point. Yeah, I think that's really starting to become true. So I'm really looking forward to all those things.
Yeah, obviously one of those big moves for Montreal, Alistair Johnston, who, wow, that's a tremendous pickup right now for Montreal. Yeah. And it's going to be so fun seeing him on a back line alongside Kamal Miller, maybe Joel Waterman as well. That's a little bit of, you know, the national team's MO right there, especially with the kind of the roles that Johnson and Miller have both taken up this season. And I know, you know, so far, Wilfred Nancy, he likes to play in a back three. So I think that's such a fantastic acquisition for Montreal. From a TFC perspective, honestly, a little bit even jealous there, because Alistair Johnston, Aurora, Ontario native, is very it's a very talented piece, of course. So I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out. And yeah, as you mentioned there, Mitch, like there's so much to look forward to. Obviously, on the women's side, they're trying to qualify for the World Cup, which I don't think they're going to have much issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they have a lot of games lined up right now against some really good opposition. So how will they kind of build off what has been such a tremendous year for that program? What kind of, I guess, you quickly just touch on it, what are we going to see on the domestic front in terms of the women's game here in our country?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to see that progress? Are we going to finally get a league or a team here in Canada for the women's game? And I think that's something I'll keep an eye on in 2022. I've been hearing some positive talks on that front, but we'll see kind of how that all plays out. But overall, yeah, man, like MLS, the Canadian Premier League, both the national teams, 2022 is shaping up to be, 2021 was really important, but 2022 is shaping up to be just as, if not even more important, especially when you consider what Jonathan David has been doing and kind of what he's linked to. And then Kyle Larin, what he's been doing. Again, he's linked to a lot of different moves as well. And a lot of the national team players, and some young guys coming up. We'd hear rumors about Jaquil Marceruti and kind of what's going to happen there in June when he turns 18. Jaden Nelson, another one who teams are liking overseas as well. There's a lot to like right now.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and I'm excited just thinking about the year ahead. Obviously, it's been a bit of a tough start to the year, I think, for all of us in terms of just what's going on right now in the province as a whole. But yeah, no, I think looking at the year as a whole, I'm very optimistic that this will be an even bigger year than last year. Maybe not even bigger because obviously we won a gold medal this past year, but another year of built momentum for the Canadian soccer landscape and potentially even bigger. Like I do think getting to a men's World Cup, like it's not just it's not going to just benefit the men's team. Like it's
Absolutely not.
It's gonna like push the women's team to new heights too, and in terms of the money and infrastructure and everything that will come with that. So yeah, I think obviously 2022 is the sky's the limit for Canadian soccer right now.
Yeah, and hopefully, this time next year we're talking about how Canada performed in 2022, Qatar 2022. So
That's crazy to
that's
think.
really exciting as a whole. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap up the show there. Obviously, a great way to start 2022 with some big news and amazing guests, and yeah, hopefully we'll have Jeff back next week, and maybe even some awards to hand out as we do our annual awards show. But yeah, thanks so much everyone for watching and tuning back in. We love doing this, and it's been great to be back. So yeah, on behalf of Michael Singh and Mitchell Tierney, till next Tuesday.
Apologies. I have